In Conversation with Terry Shepard, award-winning broadcaster, narrator, and author. A deep dive into the writer's craft with the artists and support systems who create the stories we love.
Thanks, Lisa. Elizabeth Crowens has been a versatile force in the entertainment industry in both New York and Los Angeles for over 25 years. Her prolific writing career includes contributions to renowned magazines such as Black Belt, Blackgate, and Sherlock Holmes Mystery. She has penned compelling stories for anthologies like Hell's Heart and Bram Stoker Award-nominated New York State of Fright. Additionally, she has authored 3 alternate history science fiction novels published under her own imprint, Atomic Alchemist Productions. Elizabeth is the recipient of the Mystery Writers of America New York Leo B. Burstein Scholarship and earned a New York Foundation of the Arts grant to produce her popular photo-illustrated anthology. Her work has been recognized with an honorable mention from Glimmer Train, an Eric Hoffer First Prize, and multiple awards from the Chanticleer Review, including 2 grand prizes and 6 first prizes. We first crossed paths when I discovered her enticing Time Travel Professor series, so I was excited to dig into Hounds of the Hollywood Baskervilles. Like her other novels, it injects real people, and in this story, famous canines into fascinating situations. Elizabeth Crowens, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Hounds of the Hollywood Baskervilles is about as enticing a title as they come. Give us a synopsis.
Well, could you imagine Basil Rathbone going into the police station or the city pound? It's 1940, and he says, "I've lost my dog." He'd be laughed at. Sherlock Holmes has lost his dog. Yeah, right. Go find him yourself. We got bigger crimes to fight. So the poor guy is desperate. He makes up some fires. He goes to a local vet's office, and he runs into 2 young PIs that have just rescued a litter of kittens. So they recognize him. They start a conversation. He's ready to hire him sight unseen. And the woman, Babs Norman, who is the head of the agency, she has a male sidekick who's actually her partner, but she's the owner of the agency. She notices he's got a variety under his arm. It's got a full-page ad from MGM. Asta, the famous canine star from the Thin Man movies, is missing, and MGM is offering a huge reward for his return, because they can't go into production without him. So she decides, okay, you know what, we're really not pet detectives, but we'll take on your case if you're willing to reenact a little bit of Sherlock Holmes, use your star power, bring in William Powell, Merle Loy, and we could go after Asta as well. So that's where the story begins.
Your 2 detective characters are masterfully constructed. Tell us more about them.
Well, they are both fictitious. However, Babs Norman is based on a real person. Her sidekick guy, Brant, is totally fictitious. He's kind of a combination of friends of the original Babs Norman. But Babs Norman was actually based on my best friend. And she passed away at the age of 93 about 6 years ago. And she was a former actress in Hollywood in the 1940s and got very frustrated and just started doing other things. So she had all these crazy stories that she would tell me, and many of them I recorded or I wrote notes, and I tons of photographs that she gave me. And I'm thinking this would be really tough to sell as a memoir, because she's not famous. And memoirs are like, you ask any agent or any editor, they're like the hardest thing to sell. And unless you're famous or infamous, you know, if you're like a disgraced FBI agent, yeah, you'd probably sell a memoir. But believe it or not, I had a acquaintance that I took some writing workshops with. This guy climbed Mount Everest and he couldn't sell his memoir. And he got an agent and she couldn't sell it. So Yeah, I mean, to me, climbing Mount Everest is pretty impressive. I'm not going to end up doing it, but he couldn't sell his memoir. So I got very busy promoting and publishing Silent Meridian that had just come out. And I invited the woman who inspired Babs Norman to my first book launch. But I told her, I said, you know what? I think I figured it out, how we're going to repackage you so we could make this, commercial and sellable. And she said, how? And I said, well, you know what? You got to give me some inspiration. Every time you go to the library, you check out a mystery. What do you watch on television? One of three things. You're either watching Turner Classic Movies, you are watching Law and Order, Murder, She Wrote, or NCIS, or you're watching Nat Geo Wild Animal Planet. And she used to tell me all these stories about rescuing kittens and dogs and stuff all over, for many, many years. So I said, I'm going to turn you into a PI. Former actress turned PI. You're really into animals. You are a total sucker for rescuing any animal in distress. And you're going to have a sidekick. And she said, I like that. And we drew it up. We got her a state attorney, and he drew up the paperwork and made it legit. So I have the rights to her life story. And unfortunately, I wish she was around to see it, or read it. So unfortunately, she wasn't. But this was what I promised her. I told her, I said, we are going to figure out how to parlay all these stories that you told me and make it into an interesting character. And that was Babs Norman.
Our guest is Elizabeth Crowens. The book is Hounds of the Hollywood Baskervilles. Her website is ElizabethCrowens.com. You are a plotter. How did you build this story?
Oh, gee. I am a plotter. I must have had over 250 pages of notes, a lot of which were biographical. But I watched a lot of Turner Classic Movies for sure. And I figured, okay, I did this alternate history series with Arthur Conan Doyle, so I know a lot about Sherlock Holmes, right? So I figured, okay, 1940, who in Hollywood was Sherlock Holmes? Of course, it was Basil Rathbone. And when I got my first biography of him and started reading it, I found out the guy was a major dog lover. He always had at least 5 dogs. And in his biographies, he goes into this whole thing about his best friend being killed while he was walking his dog. He was crossing a busy street. He got hit by a car. 2 of the dogs got hit by a car, but the dog survived. His friend did not. And apparently, I had Basil lose the dog that was his friend's. And so every time he would see this dog, it would remind him of his friend. And therefore, of course, he was heartbroken when the dog disappears. And I'm thinking, well, good premise for a start. However, nobody knows really who the dog is. I mean, the dog's owner is famous, and he's got these Sherlock Holmes connotations, but the dog himself is not famous. So I'm thinking, okay, we need a famous dog also that's going to be taken, right? So it just happened to be on TCM that night was the Thin Man. And of course I had seen it before, but I'm watching Asta and I'm saying, that's it. Asta will be missing. And then we'll pull in Nick and Nora Charles, So it'll be this kind of too many cooks in the kitchen, type of caper where you've got 3 actors that play detectives on screen, and then 2 real detectives going after the missing dogs. And that's how the real thing kind of came together.
Who is the ideal audience for Hounds of the Hollywood Baskervilles?
Anybody who likes TCM, who really loves the nostalgia of the old 1940s films, and especially with the Thin Man and with the Sherlock Holmes. Between those, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's an automatic sell.
You have an established brand in the science fiction genre. What made you switch to detective fiction?
Well, I wanted to do mystery anyway, and this was a promise to my friend.
The first book in your Time Travel Professor series was traditionally published, but like many authors who have been on this program, you ended up republishing the series yourself.
So, despite the fact that it won awards, I couldn't get anybody to pick up the rest of the series, so I ended up having to self-publish it, and of course had to learn by the seat of my pants what self-publishing was all about. So it was very frustrating, and I decided, you know what, I am going to start another series. And I was very interested in mystery, and I wanted to do my friend the honors, per se, and started that.
Elizabeth Crowens is our guest. Her newest book is Hound of the Hollywood Baskervilles. More about her on the web at elizabethcrowens.com. What influenced you to write fiction?
I wanted to be a screenwriter. That was my whole intention, despite the fact that most of my college training was in photography and cinematography. So, but the problem is I was not interested in television. It's too bad, that my headspace wasn't into trying to get into a writer's room. But I was into it, experimental film, features. And I couldn't afford, I was a single mom at the time. I needed a paycheck. If I was going to put out time and effort and work, I needed to see a paycheck. I couldn't afford to live off of spec scripts. So I cashed in on the fact that I was a photojournalist and a photographer, and I broke into doing stills on movie sets. So that's how I supported myself for the most part while I was out in Los Angeles. But unfortunately, with the long hours and everything that I had to put in, plus, of course, take care of a child, I didn't have time to write. And that's the reason why it came out there. I have another series that I'm working on that is not published yet, but a lot of it will entail a lot of the behind-the-scenes situations that I encountered when I was, in Los Angeles. And that one is a lot more contemporary than the 1940s series, for sure, because I was not even born in the 40s, so I was not alive back then. But I obviously know a little, quite a bit about production. I've worn a lot of different hats in a lot of different departments, and have some great stories to tell.
You and I both write under noms de plume. Elizabeth Crowens is one of the coolest brand names out there. Where did it come from?
Oh, God, that came back from the 80s. I was writing for Ninja magazine. And I have a background in martial arts, and I used to do a lot of martial arts magazine articles. And I used to write some very interesting nonfiction articles about what the real ninjutsu was. And yet a lot of people wrote the sensational stuff. And this is when they had the crazy Shokosugi films, and everybody was kung fu fighting, and they had all those crazy martial arts films in the mid-'80s. And frankly, I worked at a really conservative company and did not want anybody to challenge me in the parking lot, saying, okay, I want to see that triple backflip and, throw ninja stars. Let's see what you can do. No, thank you. I think I'm going to use a pen name. I don't need to have that follow me back home. So that's when I started using the pen name. I was looking for something to mimic E=mc². And I originally came up with Elizabeth Manning Constance Crowens, and then I shortened it.
The best stories conclude with a doorway to the next book. And you did a great job of leaving some tantalizing hints at the end of Hounds of the Hollywood Baskervilles that set the scene for what I assume will be the next adventure.
Yes, absolutely. And I do it in my sequel, which I just finished, by the way, and turned into my publisher. So, but yes, I do. I set it up and you get a very strong hint as to what is going to happen in book 2.
Why write?
You know what? When I was in film school, I always liked writing and I always liked reading, but I was also very much a visual artist for many, many years too. So I was kind of one of those multi-poly, whatever, talented type of people. And I realized when I took my first 16 millimeter film course in college, how expensive it is. And I mean, this is long before, this is when everybody had to shoot on film. Nobody trusted video. We were at the mercy of film labs and maybe getting short ends to be able to splice together to be able to shoot on 50-year-old cameras. And it was amazing how much time it took and also money. There were no iPhones. There were no DSLRs that had video capabilities that people these days, they could be a 1-person or 2-person film crew. It didn't exist back then. You needed a village to be able to make a film. Even the people who were known for quote unquote guerrilla filmmaking, it still was a big deal. So, but with writing, I could write a screenplay and all it cost me was back then, typewriter even, on my electric typewriter and paper. Now, of course, this is in the time before electronic submissions, where you literally had to print out a script and mail it to an agent or a producer, but which got very expensive. And then, of course, you had to put a self-addressed stamped envelope if you ever wanted to see it back, and it might be beaten up and look really bad by the time you got it back. However, it was still cheaper than trying to produce independent film by myself. So that's when I just started doing a lot of writing.
The book is Hounds of the Hollywood Baskervilles, written by our guest, Elizabeth Crowens. Find her online at elizabethcrowens.com and ask for any of her magical creations wherever cool books are sold or from your favorite online bookseller. Elizabeth, it's great to be with you again. Thanks for the conversation.
Thank you.
In Conversation with Terry Shepard is a copyrighted presentation. All rights reserved. I'm Lisa Davis. Join Terry Shepard next time in Conversation.